This is Mitch in the 1000houses.com podcast. I'm here with Brian O'Neill. He's up in Chicagoland area, and he is a brother in arms in that he specializes in seller financing, not only when he buys, but also when he sells. So we're going to be talking about the art of seller financing and how it works, I guess, on my side over here in San Antonio and how it's working over there on his side in Chicagoland. How you doing, Brian?
Doing great, Mitch. Thanks. Happy to be here. Look forward to chatting with you today.
Yeah, man, it's great. So one of the first questions I asked you was like, when you talk about seller financing, I said, you certainly can't buy enough houses with seller financing to keep your pipeline full, can you? And your answer was a little surprising to me. You said that you could. So talk to me about that. How are you getting so many houses with seller financing? When I said seller financing, I was thinking that the seller was actually financing you, but you also lumped in sub two, which is a form of seller financing, but wasn't exactly. I could kind of understand with the sub two, but go ahead and tell me how you're able to do that.
Yeah, and thanks for clarifying that, because that's what I meant.
Oh, okay.
That was part of one of the strategies of seller financing. And to clarify further, I will never have enough homes for all the buyers that need my service. So we might have miscommunicated offline a bit there, but my pipeline is I want a bunch of houses, so I'll never have enough. But there's certainly enough out there. As we're buying on creative financing or seller financing, that's what I'm looking for. I mean, first and foremost, I wake up every day and I have the mentality of who can I help today? There are people out there that have real problems that the traditional market simply can't solve. And those are the sellers that I'm looking for, whether it's someone who's behind on his mortgage. You know, the pandemic hurt a lot of people, and I picked up a house today. The guy's way behind on his mortgage. I can help him. The traditional market's not going to help with that. So I can help to get him caught up and take over his payments and help him move on to the next stage of his life. So those are the types of sellers that I'm looking for, and I'm looking to try to help on a daily basis. Now, on the owner financing side, for people who own their house free and clear, Mitch, I mean, as you know, roughly 35 to 40% of homes in North America are owned free and clear without a loan. Not all those people want to sell conventionally. Some sellers don't want to take the tax hit. They want cash flow. They want to be out of the landlord business. There's a bunch of reasons why they would be open to selling on seller financing versus just taking the lump sum and cashing out and moving on. And again, those are the individuals and families that we're trying to work with here on a daily basis in Chicago.
Well, those landlords I have found are really primed to take payments because they understand it. They've been taking payments. They understand the tax consequences of selling a bunch of properties and taking a big lump sum that it's not their homestead, so they don't get any break. So I've had some luck with the landlords. But you almost have to bring it up to them. To me, they all want cash until you say, I think I know how I might be able to save you a hit on your taxes. Would you like to hear about it? And then they say, yeah. And then you start talking about seller financing. And now seller financing has a whole nother connotation to them. By the way, your stock went up with me immediately when you said, you wake up in the morning and try to figure out who can we help today? Because I find that that's a super critical mindset position to be in. If you're out there trying to sell someone something all the time, it just doesn't seem to work as well as if, let me see who I can help, who really needs me, and where can I find these folks and show them what I can do and see if it works for them.
Yeah, 100%. And that didn't happen overnight when I first started talking to sellers, Mitch. It was, I had to get to the point where I ask a lot of questions. And it doesn't take a lot to find motivation or not motivation, right? If a seller's not motivated, again, everybody wants the same thing. They want to sell their house in 2 days for top price, 10, 15,000 over asking and be done with it. Yeah, me too. But that's not what everybody gets to do. And I'm always asking like, hey, what's the situation, right? Why are you selling your house? Where are you going?
Well, walk us down that conversation. What does this conversation go like? How does it start out?
Yeah, if I'm talking to a seller, after we exchange the introduction and pleasantries, it's just, hey, I noticed you had a house for sale. Because if I'm talking to an expired listing, I noticed you had a house for sale. First and foremost, is it still available? Are you still looking to sell? But yes, and I'm just curious. Why'd you take it off the market? What happened? Because there's a reason. There's a reason they took it off the market. There's a reason why it didn't sell. And then after I get that information, I just let them go. I'm looking for them to tell me something that I can hone in on. Like, well, I'm selling because I took it off the market because I had a bad relationship with my realtor. My realtor wasn't getting it done. Tell me a little bit more about that. Yeah, me too. I've had that happen to me. And I'm trying to build some immediate trust and rapport in a few minutes. And then I'm listening for some major pain points like I need to move, I need to relocate, or I've already relocated. And then I'll ask,
or I couldn't sell it because my house wasn't worth much more than what it was worth less than what I was asking, what I needed.
Yeah, I got divorced. I can't afford the place anymore. I already moved. I got 2 housing payments. There's so many reasons. When I talk about terms, I get the question like, why would anybody do that? Why would anybody sell their house and sell their financing? And there's more reasons why they would versus why they would not.
Yeah, I agree. So then when you go to sell your houses, you're selling on terms too, always 100% of the time, or,
that's what I'd like to do. If it's a great deal, if it's a great opportunity, I'm not lost on the fact that I might rent it long-term, especially so I can cash flow it. But I would prefer to do something on either a lease option where I go back to who can I help? I can help a buyer who is maybe self-employed and can't qualify for a loan right now. They need a little bit of seasoning. Maybe somebody who had a life event, a significant life event, like they went through a divorce or they had a medical event. Like it's got nothing to do with them and their ability to afford the house. It's just they have this credit issue temporarily because it can all be fixed, or they just need time. So I can put them in a house on a lease option. If they prove themselves, then we can turn around. And by proving themselves, I mean, not be late for say a year and then get their down payment up to a certain percentage. Because I own the house, the deed is in my entity's name, I have the ability to finance them long-term. They'll never have to go to a bank.
What are your terms look like?
Yeah, on a situation like that, Mitch, I'd like to give them maybe anywhere from a 2 to 5 year option on the house. Again, one that I own. If I'm in the middle and we do a lease option with the seller, I have to be, I can't give them 5 years. But if I give them 2 to 5 years, and then once they prove themselves, maybe get their down payment up to 20%, let's say, and no lates for a year, then we can look at doing something on a contract for deed or whatever it's called in your particular state. We call it articles of agreement for deed here in Illinois, but that's something you can do long term.
Yeah. So in San Antonio, we just do a mortgage and deed of trust because we have some of the fastest foreclosure laws on the planet. And by the way, Georgia mimics Texas, or Texas mimics Georgia, whichever way you want to look at it. We call it contract for deed, though, here, for, if you're going to stay on title. We have some stiff penalties if you do your reporting wrong at the end of the year. So it's almost so stiff that people got afraid and don't want to do it. But it's not that hard to conform. You just have to make sure you don't make a mistake. So what interest rate do you charge on a contract for deed? Or what, you usually go 20 years, or you try to go the least amount of years as you can? Or do you, like, I just go 30 years because, quite honestly, I don't need more money per month. And the more money I make per month, the more tax I'm going to have to deal with. And I like to do 30 years because after 5 years, they really haven't paid down anything. And my notes are still worth pretty much, if not more than they ever were, because the balance hasn't gone down very much. But what's your take on that?
I'm with you. So I have to watch depending on how I acquire the house, I have to watch the monthly cash flow. Because again, in some of these cases where I take subject to an existing loan, I'm paying debt every month for the seller's loan, even though I own the house. So if it makes sense to do a 30-year loan, then I'll absolutely do it. It just really depends on the situation. But as far as interest rates, I like to look at maybe, somewhere between the 5 to 8% range, depending on what the house costs. Right. Yeah. And I'm telling you, buyers are happy with that. I may say that spit out 8%. You think that's crazy. It's like when you look at the total cost of a loan to go to a bank, like that's not that expensive.
Well,
what do you do?
My interest rate's 30 years and 10%.
Yeah.
But what I'm doing is I'm backing into the rents, making sure that my price, when it's all said and done after the down payment, or figuring a 10% down payment at least, that their PITI payment is the same as what the rent is across the street for the same house. So the question just becomes, do you want to keep paying rent, or do you want to make a mortgage payment for the same amount every month and live across the street in the same house? And I just believe and have proven throughout my 27-year career that there's enough renters out there that would rather own for X than pay X for rent. And the separator just being, do you have some money for a down payment, and do I like you? You know, I need to believe in you, or at least not have reasons not to believe in you, you know, and then and collect my down payment and go about making sure they have a home. You know what I mean? So it's
Right.
kind of like the tote your note car lot. I mean, the people aren't interested. They don't care about the rate. They don't care about the price. What it is can I come up with a down payment, and can I afford the payment? Because right now what they're doing, they're paying the money every month for nothing. Well, actually, what's going to happen if they pay on time for long enough, they're going to get a rent increase. That's what they're going to get for it. You know, so
Yeah, we don't do that. No, only the taxes go up, right?
yeah, taxes, or maybe the insurance fluctuates some,
Yeah.
but not. So what kind of volume are you doing, and how many houses are you dealing with every day, so I get a handle on where you're at?
Yeah, I mean, I live in I'm in the Chicagoland area, so there's, several million people here, and it's been a bit of a challenge with the status of the market, because houses are selling and the inventory is lower. But we're doing, and doing these creative deals, doing these terms type structures with the way that they're structured and how I'm buying them. Because again, not everyone's a candidate. I'm not paying all cash for homes. We're buying on terms. So typically I'm not putting any money down. I'm never putting my credit on the line ever. And, I only need to do about 12 to 15 a year to really create a lot of opportunity for the business, because some of these deals are worth anywhere from 75 to north of six figures when it's all said and done. So that's really what our target is.
And I wanted to make that clear. Like, a lot of people, number one, if you think it takes money to make money, then you got to get your head readjusted, because if that's the case, none of us would be here, most likely. You know what I mean? I don't know about your own personal story, but I was dead broke. When you don't have money, you got to find strategies that allow you to function with no money. And then as you get a little money, then you can do some strategies that take a little bit of money, and then you can work your way around. The other thing is you don't have to do a million deals a year to change your whole life. I mean, we do about 8 a month, but I acclimated to that over years, 20 years. Was fortunate enough to find the right people in the right places, and we've all been together for a long time. The odds of that happening, I don't know, but it seems pretty much like a miracle to me, although I know it can be done because I see people all over the country that are doing it too. But we just have such a great team of people. What does it take financially to get in a typical deal that you're getting into with a sub loan? What kind of money does it take?
Yeah, other than my marketing costs, and we're calling sellers. My marketing costs are low. I'm not doing a lot of mailings. We're calling people actively trying to sell their house for sale by owners, expireds. We do pull targeted lists like absentee, out of state owners, tired landlords, free and clear houses. Those are great lists to pull. Or low equity as well. As I mentioned, that's great for subject to purchasing. I bought houses for $10. I've literally given the seller a check for $10, and I get control of their house, right? So
that was just technicality, right? Because there had to be some exchange of money. So
yeah, and that's what it says in our agreement, that we give them $10. But if I'm doing, a subject to transaction or owner financing, we're doing an actual closing. So I'm in most cases paying their closing costs. So if it costs $5,000 to close on a $300,000 house, and then I turn around, I get a buyer, and they're giving me 5% on a house that I'm selling them for, $300,000. Well, I just got a free house. I mean, do the math, right? So I'm using the buyer's funds to close on the house, and then creating cash flow on a monthly basis. And then if they ever do cash out of the house, there's obviously a premium in what I bought it for versus what I sold it to the buyer for. I'm more of a long-term hold.
Hey,
I want them to stay in it.
I'm going to throw something out, and I'm not, believe me, you're a smart, sophisticated man, and But when I got to a point where I couldn't, or I wanted to do more, I started to develop like how to raise the private money. Because if you have private money that's non-recourse, first lien, collateral only, wrappable, then you don't have to just look for those houses that fit like what you're saying. You can get like almost any house now, as long as there's some kind of upside for you. And so I raised about, in my career right now, I have out $26 million in wrappable money longer term, like 15 years amortization. But I'm paying like 8 to 9 to 10%, you know what I mean, for that longer term money. 15 years with a 5-year balloon, I pay 6%. So you can figure 15-year amortization. The least I want the money for is 5 years. If you can't give it to me for at least 5 years, then I really don't want it, because I'll make the deal and look up and I'll be having to do something with it again.
Yeah.
Most of my people are going 10 years to 15 years. And that's really where my explosion kind of came, was I unlocked the box on the money that would buy these houses under the terms, like the same kind of terms that you have. It's just I went out and sought people that would give me the money without me having to have a personally guarantee and not all this stuff. The only thing is I can't, my promise to them is that I will never let them in for over 65% of what I can owner finance the house for. And then I use that owner finance formula where you plug the rents in and run through and show them, the rents in the neighborhood are this, and this is what I can sell this house for. Unlike comps, they're not really comps. But I just came out with my book to help me with that. It's called The Art of Private Lending, which is a book that I give to people I think who might have the resources. And it shows them how to loan their money out to people to make 12, 14, 16, 18%. But it also shows them where that's going to be more of a job and they're going to have to go to work. And then about halfway through the book, it's like, if you're still interested in loaning money, but you don't want the job, I'll borrow the money for a premium rate, but not that much. And if you want to just have a passive income, call me. It's been working pretty good. I think private money, well, the name of my private money course was Private Money Changes Everything, because it literally just makes everything in the world available to you pretty much. Do you chase much private money?
I don't chase as much. And I mean, I'll just say something on your book. I mean, and there's a lot of folks out there who want to be in the real estate game, but don't want to do what we do. They don't want to do the dirty work, right? And be in it. And there's an opportunity for you as an investor, if you want to be in real estate and gain the advantages of a return, but don't want to deal with all the day-to-day stuff, getting with someone like you and is a great way to do that. There's a lot of money sitting around on the sidelines. There's a lot of uncertainty coming up. And this is always a proven asset class. I mean, if you look at the history of real estate, it's going up constantly. Right?
Before this is over, we'll be given how to get a hold of Brian. And I mean, if you're in Chicagoland and you think that the thing about what I like about private money for the private lender, and this is from their side, the advantages to them is they're either getting paid or they're getting something very valuable that's worth more than what they loaned on. I mean, actually, in most of the cases, a lot of times, of course, there always could be circumstances where it's different, but most of the time they'd do a lot better if I didn't pay and they got my house, which has never happened. But if they ever got my house, they would probably go into the house business because they'd make so much money. But the cool thing is for once, your money's backed up by a hard asset. And if it doesn't work the way it's supposed to work, you're going to own that hard asset. What my commitment is, and I tell my private lenders this all the time. I say all the time. I tell them before they do their first deal. I always tell them before they do the first deal. I have two rights. If you make this loan to me, I have two rights every day of my life that I owe you money. I have the right to pay as agreed, or I have the right to walk you this deed on this property. If you don't like this house for the amount of money I'm loaning you, do not do the loan. Now, I've never given a house back in my career. I've never filed bankruptcy, never been foreclosed on, ever. But I have that right. And the reason why I have that right and why I want to borrow money under that condition is, I owe 26 million payments on $26 million on the first of the month. That's a lot of stress. I'm not worried about if things go the ways they're supposed to and that Mitch Stephen can handle his business the way it is. What I'm worried about is catastrophic. I'm worried about if a meteor hits the side, close to San Antonio, or if Kim Jong dumbass drops a nuclear bomb, or if locusts or whatever. I'm worried about the things that I can't control, because what I can control, I'm going to run my business right. It'll be fine. The reason why I'm paying the premium is so, 27 years of buying assets over here, 1,300 mini storage doors. I don't want to risk that and lose it because of something that I could no more stop than I could turn the sun off. That's why I pay a premium, kind of like a hedge against disaster, my own insurance policy. I pay a little bit of a premium so that if it's not Mitch's fault, Mitch can just, and my promise is, if I ever chose to give you that deed back, you won't, if I ever chose not to make the payment, you won't have to sue me or foreclose on me to get the deed. I will walk it to you. There will be no taking me to court and filing for foreclosure and me collecting money while you're not collecting money. That'll never happen. If I couldn't pay, I'm walking the deed over to you. Now I'll deliver it myself, again, never happened. Don't see it happening, but we got to be clear on the rules, because that's why I'm paying 8 or 9 or 10%. Exactly why I am,
Yeah. It's a great return, and people love clarity.
Yes. And so what do you think about the idea of sub twos? And some of these things, when you wrap, you don't really have the right to wrap. So there's, it's the elephant in the room in this conversation. So let's just get it out on the table. I've always been kind of afraid to build a really big portfolio of sub two paper, because I don't know when it's going to be that the banks are going to want to call those notes, if there's ever going to be a situation where they want to. And then I think when the clock ticks a certain time, if it ever ticks that time, that they'll all want to do it. You know what I mean? On all your notes. You know what I mean? So how do you feel about that conversation, and what do you think about that?
Yeah. And so we're talking about, the due on sale clause. There's a clause in every mortgage that the bank can call. If you transfer the title, the bank can call the loan due. I haven't had it happen to me. It likely will at some point, and that's something that comes up with sellers, and we disclose that. We don't hide it from them. Like, this is something that can happen. This is a risk, because all sellers ask, like, what's the risk to me? And one of the things that we've done is we always let the attorney, I do this the right way too. We let the attorneys handle it. And it's like, hey, our attorneys are going to make this to where it's palatable for both parties. Right. And I can do a contract for deed with the seller. I can do a contract for deed with the seller where, again, we call it something different here in Illinois, but the title's not transferring. It's an escrow. And I don't get the deed until I fulfill my obligation to the seller. So, that's one way to avoid that situation from happening, is I don't actually have the title. The bank's not going to call the loan due. It goes right back to the seller.
Interesting. That's interesting. Very interesting. I've never heard that before. So that's one of the reasons I do these podcasts, Brian. I'm on and I learn shit that I didn't know before.
And Mitch too. I appreciate that too. And it gives so now the seller does not have to foreclose. They get the deed back if I default. Again, when a seller's nervous about transferring, hey, the loan's going to stay in place, even though they're in pain, like I don't feel comfortable with that. The loan's going to be in my name, my credit's at risk. And it's like, okay, look, you have to understand that I do this every day. I'm paying tons of loans. I don't earn money unless I pay your loan. Like, this is a long-term play for me. This is how I get paid. So it behooves me to stay in the game and pay. But if I don't, the house goes back to you. And this will make you feel comfortable. You don't have to foreclose on me. So that's one way around it. And then, it's never going to happen on a seller financing situation, but you can do the same thing with a seller who owns their house free and clear, that just doesn't feel comfortable giving you the title. Maybe they want a down payment. Maybe they want some type of security, so they don't have to foreclose on you. And that's one way to make it a little bit more palatable for them, is the contract for deed.
That's what drove me to go find the private money, because I was doing, but I was actually taking subject to, and was like actually in the crosshairs of the due on sale clause, thinking, as long as I make the payments, they're probably not going to call me. But I wasn't dumb enough to believe that if the interest rates went up to 14-15%, that they wouldn't start calling all these notes due, And I lived through a time when I saw 18% interest. I was barely a man at the time, or a young man, but I remember it in the Carter years. Interest rates were Mortgage loans were 18%, 16%. It was crazy.
Crazy.
So I know it can happen. So my personal philosophy on the sub two, but I'm not an expert at it. Like I haven't done it. My deal is I'll do a sub two if it's got an over the top amount of equity. If it doesn't have an over the top, then I'll use my private money and I'll just take it out. You know what I mean? That's my personal philosophy. Doesn't mean, well, obviously it's not the only way to do anything. My way is not the only way to do anything, but
that's what you feel comfortable with. And one more thing on sub twos too is there are companies that will give you insurance against the due on sale. Now it's not inexpensive. It's typically 1% of the purchase price, but if the loan gets called, they'll pay it off. You're going to pay. So on a $300,000 house, you're going to pay $3,000 for insurance. And if it ever does get called, you have your protection. So
you pay it one time?
Yeah, it's one time. It's an insurance policy, and if it does get called, they'll protect you. Again, it's not something.
Didn't know that. See, this is why you have podcasts. Everyone thinks you have podcasts because you're an egomaniac. No, you have podcasts because you talk to smart people and you learn a lot of stuff, that you didn't know because you're talking to smart people. And there are so many ways to make money in this real estate business. So many different strategies. So many ways through and over and under things legally that allow for outcomes that people think are not possible. And you just got to talk to enough people. Who did you study along your path? Did you study anybody in particular?
Yeah, I mean, I started looking at creative financing. I think you had him on the show not too long ago. Ron LeGrand was my first introduction to terms. And then my coach and mentor is a guy by the name of Chris Prefontaine, who taught me everything I know. But then you're just kind of studying. Like I'm constantly studying about subject two. It's something I really love to do, to take ownership of houses with little to no money down. And a guy by the name of Pace Morby is really, really big with subject two. And I've learned a lot just by following him, just by watching what he does. And
So, I mean, the goal of my podcast is for people to find some way to replace their job, like get in control of your own destiny, like figure out get some kind of side hustle that'll eventually pay whatever it is your job's paying. Because at that point, you'll free up about 2,600 hours a year that you really get to figure out who you want to be and what you want to be good at. And you'll have the time to get good at it. 2,600 hours is a lot of time to be able to immerse yourself in either your passion or some kind of endeavor to fill your dream. If you believe in the 10,000 hour rule, which basically says by the time you put 10,000 hours into something, you're one of the best in the world, then you're talking about 4 years to become one of the best in the world at the strategy that you choose. That's really how it works, right? I mean,
totally. Yeah.
You couldn't do it if you're not driven. If you don't like what you're doing, it's not going to work. You can put in all the hours you want. But if you're driven and you put in your 10,000 hours and you love what you're doing, then one of the reasons why I say you have to love what you're doing is you can't put in that many hours in something you hate and be really connected. You have to be emotionally excited about it or you're just wasting time. So,
yeah, I hated what I was doing. So that's what drove me to do real estate and get out of my W-2. And, now I don't do that anymore. And
what did you do?
Not
to bring up any bad memories, Brian, but what did you do?
No, I was a salesman. I was a corporate salesperson for 25 years. I worked as an elevator salesman for 17 years. I sold elevators, nothing to do with real estate. And I was all over it, mainly as it relates to industrial. So I spent a lot of time in Texas, actually, with, the oil and gas and petrochemical. And, that is, again, nothing to do with real estate. I just didn't like being away from my family, being away from my son. I have a young son. I was traveling all the time. And I saw this as my way out. And because my why was so strong, which was, being with my family, not missing my son grow up, I went at it with everything I had in a short amount of time. Like I didn't have a lot of time. And once I was able to replace my income, I just poured gas on it. And I'm continuing to do that until I get
this is some personal questions. You don't have to answer if you don't want to, but it's hardest for a person that makes a lot of money to switch over, normally, because if a person's made a lot of money, 9 times out of 10, they've moved their lifestyle right up to whatever that is. But even so, even if they haven't, if they've been saving a lot, then that's a little easier, for them to move. But were you making a lot of money when you quit your job?
I was making, I have no problem sharing. I was making a couple $100,000 a year, but I was trading time for dollars. Right.
Not
And
jumping.
I was also plateauing. Like that's all it was going to be unless I decided to go up the corporate ladder. And I just I knew that didn't feel right. And I knew that I could make way more if I did my own thing.
I've known, my dad was in sales his whole life, straight commission. I've known a lot of them. And the one thing that would just irk me to no end if I was a straight commission sales guy is every year they set the bar higher. And then if you do really good, they'll cut your territory in half. You know what I mean? It's like, I spent 4 years building this territory. Now you've taken half of it away from me and given it to somebody who just showed up. That would piss me off to no end.
Yeah. Lesson being there is you have no control over it. It's like there's nothing you can do about that. But if you have I have my own real estate business, I have complete control over what I do.
That's what drove me, was the freedom. Really. Mm-hmm. I can make X amount or X amount. I don't really require a whole lot to live. I mean, when I started, I needed $35,000 a year, which, by the way, for those of y'all who don't make a lot of money, that could be your greatest blessing at this moment if you're thinking of transitioning, because when you only make $35,000 or $40,000 a year or $50,000 a year, it doesn't take a whole lot of houses to replace your whole income. It may only take one, if you find the right one. I hope that doesn't happen to you, because that's a whole nother thing. Make too much money on the first house. I've seen that kill some people. I did like 3 or 4 deals. I put $35,000 in the bank. The job that I had for $35,000 was bartending. I was looking for a bartending job when I got one, and if I want one, I'll go find another one. So it was real easy for me to say, okay, I'm leaving that alone. I'm going to delve out the $35,000 just like I have been getting it at my job. So I got a year to go with it. I'm going to see what I can do. That was March of 1996. I quit my job, and by the end of the year, I did 45 houses. I had made more money than I ever knew possible. It was a different time, though. Make sure we know, March of 1996, you could get in the classifieds at 8 in the morning, and by noon, have a perfectly good deal. 7 days a week, whenever day you wanted to choose. And if you screwed up, you'd get 2 deals, and you didn't know how you were going to pay for them.
If you screwed up, that's funny. I like that one.
Yeah. You'd screw up, you get 2 deals. You had no idea how you're going to pay for them. Now, this is the skyline of San Antonio, Texas. In 1996, 97, 98, 99, 2000, you could go to the lesser parts of town, or the medium to lesser parts of town in that city, and houses were $10,000, $15,000, $20,000 all day long. As many as you could pick up. And they would all work. You'll find this interesting. No one would loan me any money because I didn't have any experience. I didn't even know. I was scared to ask for a loan because anyone I knew to ask was a friend of mine, and I didn't want to let a friend or a family member down. So I was scared to death to ask anybody to loan me money. But guess who would loan me money? I had great credit score. And so I applied. I figured out back then, if you had a great credit score and you applied for a credit card, they just looked at your credit score and then they gave you the full boat. So I applied for 75 credit cards in a 2-week period and got 55 of them. And I went on a house buying spree that I still will have trouble beating. I was buying houses, give me 10 off this card and 10 off this card. That's the acquisition and the rehab, and I taped those cards inside that folder because I didn't want to commingle and get all jacked up.
Yeah.
And I bought my first 100 houses on credit cards.
Remarkable.
Yeah.
That's being resourceful. I mean, I love it. It's just.
Well, that's what these podcasts and meeting with these people is about, is like for all of us to get out of our box. And I don't care who you are, you're in a box. You're just in a box to the next level. There's always another level. There's always another place. I wore a lot of hats for a long time. 7 years ago, 8 years ago, I couldn't do it anymore. I was burned out after 15 years or whatever. And I went on a mission to take myself out of the business. It took me a year and a half to figure it out. But I did it by talking to people and paying for masterminds or getting around people that had already done it. And I let them show me, I agreed to drink the Kool-Aid as long as I trusted them. I'd drink all the Kool-Aid. I'd let them unwind me and then wind me back up a different way. And it worked finally.
It's important to be around people that are smarter than you.
Always. And have you found yourself in that thing where you're the smartest guy in the room and you think, what the hell am I doing? I need to get out of here.
Well, that's why I worked for the same company for 17 years, is because I thought I knew everything and I thought I was smart and I didn't need any help. And it wasn't until I surrounded myself with people who knew way more than me where the needle started to move in my life. And I will never not be in a situation where I'm not surrounded by people who can push me and move me to the next level. So it's guys like Chris and his family who I can constantly lean on, who are up leveling me. I mean, you know what they say, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. I mean, it's 100% true. So don't be the best guy in that room and if you are, don't be in there for very long.
Yeah, I spent time, in the real estate investment club, and for many years felt good that I was the hot shot in the room. And then one day it hit me like a ton of bricks. You got to get out of this room. You got it. You're dying. You're dying in this room. So.
Yeah.
All right, my friend, how do people get a hold of you if they want to talk to you, or I don't know, they want to loan you private money, or whatever?
And that's something we're doing too, because we really want to ramp it up here. There's a lot of people to help in Chicago. You can email me. You can go to my website. So I'll leave both. My website's bkwpropertysolutions.com. If you go into the resources tab, there's a bunch of stuff you can grab for free. And then if you want to have a conversation with me personally, I'm happy to talk to you about, how to get into this business, how to learn this business. And then again, if you're looking to invest, I'm all for it. Brian, Brian at bkwpropertysolutions.com. And those are and then I'm on social media all over the place.
Okay. So for those of y'all who are used to the old moniker, we're going to go to 1000houses.com/BKW. Okay. 1000houses.com/BKW. That'll get you over to the show notes. Everything he's talked about will be over there. If you didn't have a chance to write that stuff down, my folks are kind of used to 1000houses.com/BKW. And tell us a little bit about that book, what it's about real quick.
Yeah. So I've got the ebook is the 6 strategies to sell your home in any market. So it's an ebook we wrote, not just for terms, it's for anybody trying to sell their house. Because again, I'm not lost on the fact that everyone's going to sell their house to me on seller financing. So you need to be educated. And that's what this book's about, to help sellers understand all of the options that are available to you. It's not just listing with an agent. It's not just for sale by owner. There's other stuff you can do.
Okay, this sounds like a marketing book for your potential sellers. No, am I right?
I give it to my sellers because I want them to know that, like, hey, if this isn't for you the way that I buy, like, you need to go learn how to sell conventionally. Like,
no, but this goes towards your servant's heart. You're saying, pick the way that's best for you. I'm one of these ways. And that's, I guess what I'm trying to point out is he doesn't just talk about trying to do what's right for the people or see who he can help today. He's really out there trying to help someone. And I just don't think you beat that kind of karma. You may not get every single deal, but I don't know how it works, but I know you win with that attitude. You just win. And I can't tell you everything about how it works, but it's some kind of natural laws that go into play, and people know sincerity when they see it. You can't fake sincerity for very long.
I agree.
All right, my friends, this is Mitch Stephen with 1000houses.com podcast. I'd like to thank y'all for stopping in to listen to Brian O'Neill over there in Chicagoland. And again, one last time, if you want his free ebook on all the different ways you can sell a house, go to 1000houses.com/BKW. And I'd also like to take 1 second to thank livecom.com, LIVECOMM.com, for sponsoring this episode. It's all about lead generation, mass texting, capturing incoming callers' cell phone numbers, and all the things you can do with that kind of strategy. I have 4 days on the market. I don't even put any signs in my yards anymore. I sell my houses within 4 days, and I do not use any signs anymore. So if you want to know how that works, go over to livecom.com, LIVECOMM.com, and watch the little video on the homepage, and you'll see exactly how it works. And then there's a million other splinters off of that, and you can use it once you get your noggin rolling there. You can figure out how to apply it to a lot of different things. So check it out. Thank you, Livecom. All right, Brian, we'll see you. Have a great week. Have a great month. Have a great year.
Thanks, Mitch. Appreciate it. Great being on.